Welcome back to a brand new PTCG live video. Today I'll be going over the top 10 new decks that we'll be getting on our new upcoming expansion, Journey Together, late this March. So with that being said, let's get into these deck lists. Let's see what is winning in Japan. So starting out with the ENS Zoroark EX here, this has already proven itself. It took top 16 at the latest Fukuoka Champions League in Japan. So basically the ENS Zoroark EX will be the main attacker in this deck, where we do have the ability trade with a built-in draw engine. We can discard a card from our hand to draw 2 new cards, and then the Night Joker, we can copy one of our ENS Pokemon's attacks from our bench. So those 2 attackers will be the ENS Darmanitan here. We will be wanting to use that second attack where we can do 90 damage to the active and then put 90 damage on one of your opponent's benched Pokemon. So very similar to the Radiant Greninja. And then we do have the ENS Reshiram also as the second ENS Pokemon that we can copy. The Powerful Rage, we can do 20 damage for each damage counter on this Pokemon. So if your opponent doesn't take a one-hit KO on our ENS Zoroark EX, we can basically do twice the damage back to your opponent. And basically probably take a one-hit KO very easily. And then we also do run the other ENS trainer cards in this deck as well. We do have the ENS Castle. They run 2 of these where ENS Pokemon in play have no retreat cost, as well as the 3 copies of the ENS PP Up. We can attach a basic energy card from our discard pile to one of our benched ENS Pokemon. So it's basically going to be like a dark patch, but just for ENS Pokemon. And then for their ace card, they used the Unfair Stamp. They got reversal energies as well for the Darmanitan, just in case we want to use that. And it looks like they also have the Binding Mochi and Defiance Band to help bump up damage, and the TM Evolution. Just in case they go second, they can evolve up those 2 Pokemon right away. So moving on to the next deck, we got the Iono's Belly Bolt here. We do run the 3-3 line of the Wattrel and Kilowattrel here. With the Flash Draw ability, we can discard a Lightning Energy from this Pokemon, and then we can draw until we have 6 cards in our hand. And then we do have the Belly Bolt line. We got 3-3 line of Tadbolt and Belly Bolt. And Belly Bolt is basically the way we're going to get energies into play very easily with Electrical Streamer as its ability. As often as you like, we can attach a Lightning Energy from your hand to one of your Iono's Pokemon. And then we do even have a decent attack with this Pokemon. 230 base damage for the Thunderous Bolt, which is a pretty good number to hit. And then during your next turn, this Pokemon can attack. We also do run the 3 copies of the Raging Bolt as a backup attacker. Since we're already running Lightning Energy cards, they did throw in some fighting support as well. They got 3 fighting energies, as well as a Slitherwing for some type coverage, and the 2 Sada's Vitality for energy acceleration as well. They do run the 3 copies of the new Stadium Lavencia here, where once during each player's turn, they may put up to 2 basic lightning energies from their discard pile back into their hand. So basically a free energy retrieval if you are running a lightning deck here. And yeah, and for their ace card, they got the Prime Catcher, which is very useful. They got 3 Boss's Orders, so they basically have 4 gusting options here. And they even run the 2 Superior Energy Retrieval just in case as well, since you are losing some of the energy cards if you use Raging Bolt's attacks as well. So moving on to the next deck, we do have Hop here. Hop is basically, looks like it's all about maxing out damage here. With all of its new trainer cards, we got the Hop's Bag, where it allows you to search out 2 basic Hop's Pokemon and put them onto your bench. And then we do have the Hop's Choice Band here, where this is a tool card, and when we have this attached to one of Hop's Pokemon, the attack cost goes down by 1 colorless energy, as well as you get to do 30 more damage to your opponent's active Pokemon. So we also do have the 4 copies of the new Stadium card Postwick. Attacks used by Hop's Pokemon do 30 more damage to your opponent's active. So that's an extra 60 more damage. They do run the 2 copies of the Hop's Snorlax for that big-hearted ability. Your Hop's Pokemon do 30 more damage, so we're basically doing an extra 90 damage very easily with our Hop's Pokemon. And then we have the Dynamic Press for 140 and then 80 to ourselves. And then some of the other attackers, they got the 2 copies of the Hop's Cramorant for the Whimsical Spit, 120 base damage. It is a little gimmicky. If your opponent doesn't have exactly 3 or 4 prize cards remaining, this attack does nothing. And then it does run the 2 copies of the Hop's Zacian EX here for that instant slash. You can do 30 damage to one of your opponent's bench Pokemon, and then 30 damage to the active. And then Brave Slash for 240 damage plus 90. So that's not too bad. You can easily take some one-hit KOs with Brave Slash here. And they even run the 3 copies of the Iron Valiant EX here, which does seem a little excessive, but it does help bump up the damage of the Tachyon bits. Every time you move it from the bench to active, you're putting 2 damage counters on any one of your opponent's Pokemon. And then they got the Techno Radar to help them search out the Iron Valiants. For their Ace card, they got the Prime Catcher. And then they got the Jet Energy and Mist Energy as their energy cards. So no basic energies at all here. Moving on to the next deck, we got the Archelodon EX deck here. And it does get a slight upgrade with some of Hop's Pokemon here. We have a 2-2 line of the Wooloo here, as well as the Hop's Dubwool here. When we evolve up this Pokemon, we can basically gust up one of your opponent's bench Pokemon into the active spot. So basically a free gusting option just for evolving this up. It can save us from using a supporter card like Boss's Orders, and instead use this instead. So not too bad. It's a little bit of an upgrade for the Archelodon EX deck in my opinion. But they do still run 3 copies of Boss's Orders here in this deck, so, and the 1 copy of Palpad also. Other than that, it's a very standard Archelodon EX deck, except for those new Hops Pokemon. Moving on to Lily's Clefairy here. This will help out Gardevoir EX quite a bit. In general, this Gardevoir deck is for the post-rotation because it doesn't run the Kirlia where you get to discard the card from your hand to draw 2 new cards. It is running a new Kirlia from Scarlet and Violet base set, I believe. And it's very similar to the current Gardevoir deck, except for that Kirlia. So basically, we got Brilliant Blender to help boost or accelerate the energies here. We can discard 5 Psychic Energies with Brilliant Blender to help us set up. And then we do have the Lily's Clefairy, which is really good. It will help us out with that Dragapult EX matchup, where the weakness of each of your opponent's Dragon Pokemon in play is now Psychic type. And then they still do run the 2 copies of Bidoof for some cheap item lock. And then we do have the traditional other attackers. We got the 2 Screamtail that can have that sniping option with the Roaring Scream and the 1 Drifloom. And they do run the 2 copies of the Rare Candy as well, since you definitely want to get Gardevoir down as quickly as possible, because the Kirlia just does not give any draw support as it does rotate out. Moving on to the next deck, this is another deck that does benefit a little bit from the Lily's Clefairy. They run one of the Lily's Clefairy for that weakness, where the Dragon Pokemon are weak to Psychic. And we do have a Evolution deck here. We got the 2 Sylveon, 1 Flareon, 1 Leafeon. And then we do have some other attackers here, like the Wellspring Ogerpon, the Paldean Tauros, probably for Fire-type coverage, and the Blood Moon Ursaluna as well. And then yeah, for the Ace card, they do have the Sparkling Crystal, just to trim off that 1 energy cost for the Terrestrial Pokemon. They got Area 0, they got all of the energy cards, a Glass Trumpet, and some gusting options as well. 2 Boss, 1 Counter Catcher. And yeah, it does help out this deck a little bit. Sylveon will get to hit double damage, so the Magical Charm will be 320 damage if we have the Lily's Clefairy in play. And you can just easily one-hit KO Dragapult EX here. Moving on to the next deck, there's another deck for Lily's Clefairy here. This is Alakazam EX. This was like the first Pokemon that was able to attack from the bench, where you have the Dimensional Hand. You can do 120 base damage, and you can use this attack even when Alakazam is on the bench. So basically, this is also here just to help us out with the Dragapult EX matchup. I know Dragapult is a really, really popular Pokemon, insanely powerful with those 6 damage counters from Phantom Dive. And basically, with the Lily's Clefairy, and it looks like they used the Ace card Maximum Belt. We have the Maximum Belt on Alakazam, and we do 170. And if we have the Lily's Clefairy, it's 340 damage. We can knock out any Dragon Pokemon with Alakazam now. And then they got the standard walling options here. They got the 3 Mimikyu, they got the Klefki, they got Natu and Xatu for the draw engine, where you can attach a Psychic Energy and then draw 2 new cards. And then they got the 1-1 line of the Rellor and Rabska to protect their benched Pokemon. Yeah, and that's just about it. Maybe Alakazam will become a little bit more playable with Lily's Clefairy. Moving on to the next deck, we got a burn status deck. Who would have thought we have seen a burn status here? But we do run a 4/4 line of the Magmar and Mag Mortar here for that new ability, the Magma Ray. We get to put 3 more damage counters on your opponent's burn Pokemon in between turns or Pokemon checkup. So burn damage is already 20 damage in between turns, so it's basically going to be 50 damage if we evolve up one of these. And the ability does stack up. If we get more of these into play, it will be much more burn damage for our side here. So we might even be able to take some knockouts pretty easily. They do run the 2 copies of the new Volcanion as well from Journey Together for that Scorching Vapor. Once during your turn, if this Pokemon is in the active spot, you can put burn status on your opponent's active Pokemon. So this is basically we put it into the active and then retreat out into something like the Bidoof that they are running in this deck as well. They do run all 4 copies of Bidoof here for that cheap item lock as well. So this looks like it's going to be somewhat of a control deck as well. They got stuff like Unfair Stamp for their ace card. They have stuff like Crushing Hammer here as well. They got the 3 copies of Judge here. 2 copies of the handheld fan, which will be pretty annoying as well. And then for the stadiums, nothing too crazy. They just got the 1 Artisan, 1 Gravity Mountain. And yeah, that's about it for this deck. And yeah, they don't have any fire energies in this deck at all, so you're not going to be using any of the fire type attacks here, so you don't even have that fire type coverage if you go up against like something like a metal deck or a grass deck. Moving on to the next deck, we do have the Tyranitar item lock here, where we do have the 3 copies of the new Tyranitar from Journey Together, the ability Menacing Gaze. As long as this Pokemon is in the active spot, your opponent can't play any item cards from their hand. So that's pretty good. You don't have to use an attack to item lock. It just has to be in the active spot to item lock your opponent. And then we do have the Cracking Stomp for 150 base damage. And then we get to discard the top 2 cards of your opponent's deck. So not too bad here. We do combine it with another Tyranitar from Paldea Evolve, I believe. And we got the Pidgeot line to help us find the cards. We got Item Lock Bidoof, we got Monkey Dory, and the Fezandipity. And then for the Ace card, we got the Neutralization Zone to slow down our opponent even more so. Try to slow them down. We got the 2 copies of Luxurious Cape. And then for the Gusting, we just got the 3 Boss and 2 Counter Catcher, which is kind of a lot of Gusting actually. So, and 4 Rare Candies. Okay, so yeah, it's the last stage 2 Pokemon in this deck, so you definitely want to have all 4 Rare Candies here. And moving on to the next deck, we do have the Blaziken EX here. We do finally get it. And let's see, they do run 3 copies of this card. And then for its ability, Boiling Fighting Spirit. Once during your turn, you can attach a basic energy card from your discard pile to one of your Pokemon. And then we do have the attack, Burning Salto, 200 base damage, and then you can't use it during your next turn. And they do have some other shenanigans in this deck. They definitely do have walling options with the Farigiraf EX here, where the basic EXs can attack it. They do have the 2 copies of the Mimikyu. They got the 4 copies of Monkey Dory. So this deck definitely looks like it definitely wants to go second on that first turn. They got 4 copies of Call Bell. They got the Precious Trolley, 2 copies of TM Evolution, 2 copies of Bravery Charm to help get extra HP on Mimikyu, I guess. And then they got the 4 Dark Energies, 3 Fire, and 2 Psychic. So it looks like they will be using the attack on Blaziken here. And then moving on to the last deck that we'll be getting with Journey Together that is pretty notable, which will be the Mamoswine here. Mamoswine EX. It doesn't have an owner, it's just an EX here. And it's not Terrestrial either, but we do run all 4 copies. We got the Man of Carry. Once during your turn, you may search out your deck for a Pokemon and put it into your hand and then shuffle your deck. And then for our attack for the 2 fighting, we got the Reverberating March for the 180 base damage, and then 40 more damage for each of your stage 2 benched Pokemon. So basically you want to get as many stage 2 Pokemon onto your bench evolved up. So they got stuff like the Garganacl, they got Pidgeot, they even got some cheaper stage 2 Pokemon that are easier to get into play like Luxray. If you're behind in prizes, you can just put it right onto your bench. And they even have the 1 copy of this Klinklank here, where you got the emergency rotation, where once during your turn, if this Pokemon is in your hand and your opponent has any stage 2, you can play this right onto your bench. And let's say for Gusting, they just got the 2 bosses orders, and that's about it. They got the 4 rare candies, since this is nothing but a stage 2 deck here mostly. They got the Precious Trolley as their ace card, the 8 basic fighting energies, and 2 copies of TM Evolution. So this deck definitely looks like it wants to go second on that first turn. So yeah, those are all of the decks that we'll be getting with Journey Together. I hope you liked this video, and please like and subscribe, and I'll see you in the next one.